Get out!
The alpha's voice cut through the hall like a blade. Every wolf in the room went still. Ren stood at the center of it all, the baby clutched against her chest. Its small body was still trembling, still damp from the ravine water, still fighting for warmth it couldn't produce on its own. She'd found it 40 minutes ago, alone, blue-lipped, making sounds no baby should make. Thin, rattling gasps that meant its lungs were filling with cold. She'd done what any healer would do, what any person with a beating heart would do. She'd saved it. And now Alpha Krennic was standing 3 feet away, his face twisted with a fury that made no sense for the situation, and every wolf she'd ever known was watching from the edges of the hall like spectators at an execution. "I said get out!" He stepped closer. The pack parted around him, smooth, practiced, automatic. They'd been parting for him their whole lives. "You brought a rogue pup into my territory. You violated pack law. You endangered every wolf in this hall." "It's a baby," Ren said. Her voice cracked on the second word. She hated that it cracked. "It would have died." "That is not your problem. It was dying. And now you're done." Krennic didn't raise his voice. He didn't need to. The authority in it was absolute, a weight that pressed down on her wolf and flattened every instinct to fight. Pack law is clear. Unsanctioned contact with rogue wolves, or their offspring, is grounds for immediate exile. You know this. She did know. She'd just never imagined it would apply to saving an infant. Ren scanned the room, face after face, wolves she'd grown up with. Mara, who she'd sat with through 3 days of labor. Jonah, whose broken arm she'd set last winter. Old Henna, who called Ren sweet girl and brought her dried herbs from the southern markets. Not one of them moved. Not one of them spoke. Mara looked at the floor. Jonah crossed his arms and studied the wall. Henna. Henna closed her eyes. "Does anyone contest this exile?" Krennic asked the room. His tone made it clear the question was decorative. Silence. The loudest silence Ren had ever heard. 2 guards stepped forward. One took her arm. She flinched, and the baby, pressed against her chest, let out a small cry. Not loud, just a sound. A tiny voice in a room full of wolves who'd decided it didn't matter. They walked her to the border. The gate, heavy timber and iron, stood open. Beyond it, nothing. Forest, cold, darkness. Her bag hit the ground behind her. Someone had grabbed it from her room. It was light. She didn't own much. The gate closed. The timber groaned. The iron latch fell into place with a sound that was somehow quieter and louder than anything she'd ever heard. Ren stood on the other side, holding a baby that wasn't hers, owning nothing, belonging nowhere. The baby's fist closed around her finger, tiny, fierce, holding on like she was the only solid thing in the world. Something shifted inside Ren's chest, not healing, not hope, something harder. "I saved you. They punished me for it, and I would do it again." She tightened her grip on the child and walked into the dark. The forest swallowed her whole. Within an hour, the temperature dropped so sharply that Ren's breath came out in white clouds that hung in the air like ghosts. The baby had stopped crying, which should have been a relief but wasn't. Quiet babies in cold weather meant something worse than noise. She checked him, because she'd started thinking of the baby as him, though she didn't know for certain. His skin was cool but not cold. His breathing was shallow but steady. He watched her with those wide eyes, and in the darkness, with only moonlight filtering through the canopy, they looked gold. Not brown, not gray, gold. Strange. She filed it away and kept moving. Her wolf was fading. The severing of pack bonds had hit her like a physical blow the moment the gate closed, a tearing sensation deep in her chest, like roots being ripped from soil. Without a pack, her wolf had nothing to anchor to. She could feel the animal inside her dimming, curling inward, going quiet in a way that felt less like rest and more like dying. Ren walked. Her feet bled where stones cut through her thin shoes. Branches scratched her arms. The baby was warm against her chest. the only warm thing left in the world. She found a clearing, stopped, looked down at the child, and then she did something that would haunt her for the rest of her life. She set him down, carefully, on a bed of moss, made sure his blanket was tucked, stepped back. Her hands shook at her sides. Her breath came in ragged bursts. She could walk away, right now, leave him where someone might find him, someone with a pack, resources, warmth to give. She'd be faster alone, lighter. She might actually survive. The baby didn't cry, didn't fuss, just stared up at her with those impossible golden eyes like he already understood. Like he was giving her permission. Something broke inside her. Not apart, open. She picked him up, pressed him against her chest so hard he made a small sound of protest, buried her face in his blanket and let out one sob, just one, before she locked it down and kept walking. She found a shallow cave as the moon reached its peak, built a fire with shaking hands. It took 4 tries, and each failed attempt felt like the universe confirming what her pack had decided, that she wasn't enough. The 5th try caught. Small flames, barely enough. The baby was too quiet. The cold was settling into his bones despite everything she'd done. She opened her shirt and held him against her bare skin, sharing what little heat her body could produce. Her wolf stirred. Barely. A flicker of warmth beneath her skin, not enough to shift, but enough to raise her temperature a few precious degrees. The baby stopped shivering. His fist found her hair, held on. He slept. Ren didn't. A howl cut through the night, low, distant. Then another answered, closer, then another, and another, coming from every direction, coming fast. Ren pressed the baby tighter against her chest. Her wolf, barely alive inside her, sent one clear message, run. But there was nowhere to go. The wolves came out of the darkness like they'd been carved from it. Not rogues. Ren knew rogues, disorganized, desperate, chaotic. These wolves moved with military precision, tight formation, controlled speed, absolute discipline. They surrounded the cave in seconds, and not one of them made a sound louder than breathing. Warriors. Real warriors. The kind she'd only heard about in stories her mentor told about the northern territories. 7 wolves shifted simultaneously. The coordination alone made Ren's stomach drop. These weren't pack soldiers. These were elite. They wore armor, black leather and steel, fitted close to the body for combat, and on each chest plate, an insignia she'd seen in books but never in person, a crescent moon over crossed swords, the Royal Guard. Ren's back hit the cave wall. She had no weapons, no strength. Her wolf was a whisper inside her, useless. But her body moved on instinct. She turned, putting herself between the warriors and the child, shielding him with everything she had left, which was almost nothing. The lead warrior stepped forward, tall, scarred across the jaw, eyes scanning the scene with tactical efficiency, the dying fire, the blood on her feet, the exhaustion carved into her face. Then his gaze landed on the baby, on the small face peering over Ren's shoulder. His expression transformed. The soldier's mask cracked, and what came through was something raw, shock, then recognition, then something that looked almost like reverence. He dropped to one knee. The armor made a sound against the stone floor. Behind him, 2 more warriors knelt. "The prince," he breathed. "Gods above, she has the prince." Ren's mind went blank. "Prince? Ma'am." The lead warrior's voice had changed completely. Careful now, gentle, like she was holding something more precious than she understood. "The baby you're carrying. Where did you find him?" "A ravine," Ren managed. 6 miles east of the Ashwood border. He was alone, hypothermic. What do you mean?" "A prince?" The warrior looked at the baby again, at the crescent birthmark behind his tiny ear that Ren hadn't noticed in the darkness, hadn't thought to look for, hadn't known to look for. "The Alpha King's son was taken from the palace 23 days ago," the warrior said. "The night his mother was killed. We've been searching ever since." He swallowed. Every patrol, every territory, every mile of forest in the realm. The air left Ren's lungs. The baby she'd pulled from a ravine, the baby her pack threw her out for saving, was the Alpha King's stolen heir. The warriors parted. All of them. A path opening through their formation with the kind of deference that only came from one thing. And a figure stepped through, larger than any of them. Silent. His presence hit Ren's wolf like a shockwave, and the wolf that had been barely alive for hours surged upward with a force that nearly buckled her knees. 2 words. Her wolf sent 2 words she had never felt before. Alpha, King. He didn't look at her first. He looked at the baby. And in that moment, Ren saw something she'd never seen in another living being. Grief and relief colliding with such force that the impact was almost visible. Like watching 2 storms meet. The warriors had gone utterly still. The forest itself seemed to hold its breath. Even the wind stopped. He stepped closer, slowly, like the baby might disappear if he moved too fast. His hand reached out, and Ren noticed it was trembling. The most powerful wolf in the realm, and his hand was shaking. The baby saw him, stiffened, and screamed. Not a cry, a scream. The kind that comes from the gut, from pure primal terror. The sound of an infant who doesn't recognize the face in front of him and wants it gone. Ren did something insane. She pulled the baby closer, tightened her arms around him, shifted her body. Not much, just an inch, but the message was clear to every wolf in that clearing. She was shielding the child from the Alpha King. The silence that followed was the most dangerous silence Ren had ever stood inside. She could feel it, every warrior's hand moving to a weapon, every body tensing, the air turning to ice around them. He stared at her. Not with anger. Not with the authority she'd expected. With something she couldn't name and didn't have time to analyze. "He doesn't know you," Ren said. Her voice shook, but she didn't drop her eyes. She should have. Every instinct screamed at her to lower her gaze, to submit, to make herself small. She didn't. "You're scaring him. You're too big and you're coming too fast and he doesn't know your scent. Slow down." Nobody breathed. She'd just told the Alpha King how to approach his own son. When he spoke, his voice was low. Quiet. The kind of voice that had never been raised because it had never needed to be. It moved through her like something physical. Not loud, but felt. In her chest, in her bones. "What's your name?" "Ren." He repeated it. Not as a question, like he was placing it somewhere permanent. "My son is alive because of you, Ren. He's alive because someone left him to die in a ravine." The words came out before she could stop them. Sharp, accusatory, aimed at no one and everyone. She immediately wished she could swallow them back. But his expression, something dark moved through it. Something wounded that was already there before she spoke. She hadn't created that pain. She'd just touched it. He didn't explain, didn't defend, didn't tell her it wasn't her place to speak. He said one word. "Come." She followed. Because the baby was calm in her arms, and the warriors were closing in, and she had nowhere else to go. And because something in the way he said her name made her wolf lie down, not in submission, not in fear, in recognition. As they traveled through the forest toward the palace, Ren caught a murmur between 2 warriors behind her. "The king hasn't slept since the queen died, hasn't eaten properly, 3 weeks of searching. And now some Packless Omega is holding his heir like she has the right." A pause. Then the other warrior, quietly, "She saved the prince's life. That gives her more right than anyone." The palace appeared through the trees, massive, dark stone, a fortress built for war, not warmth, towers cutting into the night sky like teeth. And Ren's wolf did something inexplicable. She stirred. Not in fear, not in submission, in recognition, like she'd been here before, which was impossible. The palace consumed her. Corridors of dark stone stretched in every direction, lit by torches that cast long, shifting shadows. Everything was built to intimidate. High ceilings, heavy doors, walls thick enough to withstand siege. It smelled like old wood and iron and something sharper underneath. Authority. Every servant they passed stopped mid-task. Every guard straightened. Eyes landed on Wren and stayed there. On her torn clothes, her bloodied feet, the baby pressed against her chest like she'd stolen something. The whispers started before she'd made it past the first corridor. "That's her? The one who found the prince? Look at her, she's Packless. What is the king thinking bringing her here?" She kept her eyes forward. She'd had a lifetime of practice at pretending not to hear. They gave her a room, not servants' quarters, a room in the royal wing with a window overlooking the gardens and a bed large enough for 4 people, adjacent to the nursery. Because the prince, as they'd learned within the first hour, screamed when she was more than a wall away. The palace healer, an older woman with steady hands and careful eyes, examined the baby while Wren watched from the corner, arms wrapped around herself, suddenly aware of how filthy she was, how wrong she looked in this room. "He's healthy," the healer said, and something in Wren's chest unlocked. "Recovering well. Minor hypothermia, some dehydration, but no lasting damage." The healer looked at Wren with an expression that was hard to read. "Another day in that ravine, and he wouldn't have survived. Whatever you did out there saved his life." Wren nodded, didn't trust her voice. When the healer finished, Wren asked the question that had been burning since the forest, the one she'd been too afraid and too exhausted to ask in front of the warriors. "What happened to his mother?" The healer's face closed like a door slamming shut. Something flickered behind her eyes. Not suspicion. Fear. "That's not my place to say." She left quickly. Too quickly. Wren bathed, changed into clothes someone had left. Simple, clean, too fine for her. She fed the baby with supplies the kitchen staff brought without being asked. Changed him, rocked him. Night fell. The palace went quiet in a way that was different from forest quiet. This was the silence of 100 people holding their breath. The baby wouldn't sleep. Wren walked circles around the too large room, singing softly, barely a whisper. A lullaby her mother used to sing. She barely remembered the words, but the melody lived in her body like muscle memory. Something she couldn't forget even when she'd forgotten everything else about the woman who bore her. She was exhausted. Her arms ached. The room was warm, warmer than anywhere she'd been in days, but she couldn't stop shivering. Her body was still running on survival instinct, still convinced the cold was coming, still braced for impact. A shadow filled the doorway. Wren's wolf stirred. That low hum of awareness, she was starting to recognize it, starting to understand what it meant. Ronan, still in the clothes he'd traveled in, dirt on his boots, blood, old, dried, on his sleeve. He looked as exhausted as she felt. Maybe more. He didn't speak, didn't announce himself, didn't ask permission to enter. He walked to the chair across the room, sat down, leaned back, and watched. Wren kept singing, kept walking. The baby's eyes drifted closed, slowly, fighting it, then surrendering. His fist released her hair. He slept. She looked up. Ronan was asleep. Head tilted back against the chair, jaw slack, hands still clenched even unconscious, fists resting on the armrests like he was ready to fight something even in his dreams. The most powerful wolf in the realm, passed out in a chair in a room that wasn't his, because he couldn't bring himself to leave his child alone. Not again. Not after 23 days of not knowing if the child was alive. Wren studied him in the lamplight, saw the exhaustion carved into his features, the weight he carried visible in every line of his body, shoulders that hadn't relaxed in weeks, a jaw that had been clenched so long the muscles had probably forgotten how to release. She went to her bed, pulled the blanket from the foot of it, crossed the room, draped it over him. Her hand hovered near his shoulder, close enough to feel the heat radiating off his skin. She didn't touch. She went back to her bed, lay down, the baby between them, her in the bed, him in the chair, the child safe in the middle. She slept. For the first time in days, she slept. Morning. She woke to light streaming through windows she'd forgotten to cover. The chair was empty. The blanket was folded neatly on the seat. He was gone. But on her nightstand, a tray of food, still warm, fresh bread with honey, a cup of tea, steam still rising, and a single moonflower in a glass of water. No note, no words, just this. Wren stared at it for a long time. She found the garden on the third day. It was tucked behind the eastern wing, a walled space that might have been beautiful once, before neglect and grief let the weeds take over. But there were bones of something lovely here, stone paths, a fountain, dry now, trellises waiting for vines. Wren sat on a stone bench in the late afternoon light, the baby in her lap. He was awake, alert, grabbing at the air with his fists like he was trying to catch sunlight. She sang. The same lullaby, the only one she knew. She knew he was there before she saw him. Her wolf told her. That low hum growing stronger every day, harder to ignore, harder to pretend was nothing. Ronan stood near the garden wall, not hiding, not approaching, just present. Keeping a distance he'd established and she hadn't questioned. She kept singing. He kept listening. When the last note faded into the garden air, his voice carried across the space. Low, careful, like the words cost something. What's that song? My mother used to sing it. Before she died. I don't remember all the words, just the melody. Silence. Wind through the dead garden. My mate used to sing to him too. The word mate. Not wife, not queen, mate. He said it like it still had teeth. Wren's chest tightened. What happened to her? His jaw worked. Wren watched the muscles flex and release, flex and release. A long pause, long enough that she thought he wouldn't answer. She was murdered, 3 weeks before I found you. Another pause. They took my son the same night, while she was still... He stopped. The unfinished sentence hung in the air like smoke. The weight of it landed on Wren like a physical thing. This wasn't just a king reclaiming an heir. This was a man who lost everything in a single night and spent 3 weeks tearing the world apart looking for the only piece of his life he could still save. I'm sorry, Wren said, and she meant it more than she'd ever meant anything. He nodded once, turned, walked away. But she noticed something. His hands, the fists she'd never seen him unclench, were open, fingers loose at his sides. It was a small thing. It meant everything. She couldn't sleep. The palace at midnight was a different creature, quieter, colder, full of sounds that belonged to stone settling and wind-finding cracks. Wren padded down to the kitchen in bare feet, expecting emptiness. Ronan was already there. He sat at a small table in the corner, not the king's dining hall, not the formal spaces. The servants' table, a cup of tea in front of him, untouched. Cold. He looked up when she entered. Something crossed his face, not surprise, almost relief. She sat across from him without asking, without ceremony, without the deference every other person in this palace would have shown. She just sat. The silence stretched between them, comfortable in a way that made no sense. Two people who barely knew each other, sharing quiet like it was something they'd practiced for years. You don't have to stay here, he said finally. His voice was rougher at night, less controlled. I owe you a life debt. I can arrange passage to any pack in the territory. You'd be welcomed, after what you did. And the baby? He has nursemaids. He screams when I leave the room. He'll adjust. Will you? She said it before she thought, heard it leave her mouth and felt heat flood her face. His eyes lifted. They met hers. And for the first time, Wren saw something behind the grief and the control, something warm, something terrified. He didn't answer, but he didn't look away either. The silence turned into something else, something with weight and heat and a pulse of its own. Wren reached across the table, pushed the cold cup aside, put the warm cup she'd just made for herself in front of him instead. Drink it before it gets cold this time, she said. His mouth twitched. Not a smile, but the closest thing to one she'd seen from him. He drank. She arrived on the 5th day, a carriage, an entourage, luggage that took 4 servants to carry. Lady Serena entered the palace like she owned it. Measured steps, perfect posture, a smile calibrated for maximum warmth with minimum vulnerability. The court visibly relaxed when she walked through the doors. Shoulders dropped. Conversations resumed. Eyes that had been watching Ren with suspicion softened with something like comfort. This was who they'd been waiting for. This was who belonged here. Serena found Ren that same afternoon in the garden. "You must be the incredible woman who saved our prince." Her voice was warm. Her eyes were warmer. She took Ren's hands in hers, both hands like they were old friends. "I've heard so much about your bravery. The whole kingdom is talking about you." Ren blinked. Nobody had ever called her incredible before. "I'm Serena. I've known Ronan since we were children. If you need anything at all, I'm here. Court can be overwhelming, especially for someone who's—" She paused, delicately. "New to this world." She brought Ren proper clothes, explained who the council members were, which ones mattered, which servants could be trusted. She was kind in ways that were specific and thoughtful. She noticed Ren's cracked hands and brought her salve, noticed she ate alone and sat with her. Ren's wolf bristled, a low unease, shapeless and persistent. "Stop it," Ren told herself. "Not everyone is a threat. Not everyone will hurt you. Stop being afraid of kindness." She pushed the instinct down, leaned into the warmth Serena offered because it felt like water after years of drought. During a quiet moment in Ren's chamber, Serena said something that landed like a stone in still water. "The king is clearly grateful to you, but gratitude is temporary." She smoothed a crease in the dress she'd brought. "Men like Ronan need queens, not nursemaids. Don't mistake his obligation for something deeper." Ren's smile froze. Something cold slid through her chest. I don't think—" "Of course not." Serena squeezed her hand. "I'm just looking out for you. I'd hate to see you hurt." After Serena left, Ren sat on the edge of her bed, holding the dried moonflower from that first morning. She turned it in her fingers. Gratitude is temporary. Was that all this was? Down the corridor, out of sight, the warmth drained from Serena's face like water from a cracked glass. She pulled a palace guard aside. Her voice was ice. "Watch her. Every room she enters, every word she speaks to the king, every time he looks at her. Report to me. Understood?" The guard nodded. Serena smoothed her dress, smiled at a passing servant. The mask was perfect. Back in her room, Ren folded the dress Serena brought her and thought for the first time in years that maybe she'd found a friend. Ronan appeared wherever the baby was, which meant he appeared wherever Ren was. The garden, the kitchen, the nursery corridor when the night was long and the baby was restless, always at a distance, always watching. But the distance was shrinking. The morning he came to the nursery while she was feeding the baby, he sat on the bench by the window instead of standing in the doorway, 3 feet closer than the day before. The afternoon she took the baby to the courtyard for sun, he walked beside her instead of behind. Their arms almost touched. Didn't. The almost was louder than contact would have been. She caught him watching her one evening, across the dining hall, over the heads of servants and guards and the machinery of a palace in motion. Not the controlled observation she was used to. Something raw, something that looked like hunger had nothing to do with food. He looked away the instant she met his eyes. His jaw tightened, his hands clenched, and Ren stood there with a plate going cold in her grip and a heartbeat she couldn't bring back to normal. Then the council meeting happened. She wasn't supposed to be there. But the corridor outside the council chamber carried sound like a tunnel, and Ren had been walking past when the voices rose loud enough to stop her. Formalize the arrangement. Lady Serena has the bloodline, the political connections, the council's full support. The kingdom needs stability. The king needs a queen. The matter of the Omega. She's served her purpose. The prince is healthy. He has nursemaids now. It's time she was given a suitable reward and relocated. Ren's feet rooted to the stone floor. Her lungs stopped working, relocated. She waited. Every nerve in her body strained toward the door, toward the voice she knew better than any other in this palace. Waited for him to speak, to say something, to say anything. The council's recommendation is noted. 5 words, spoken in that low, steady voice. 5 words, and not one of them was she stays. Not one of them was she matters. Not one of them acknowledged the moonflowers on nightstands and midnight kitchens and hands that almost touched. The council's recommendation is noted. Her chest caved in. Her wolf, already weakened, already fading, howled inside her. A sound of grief so deep it was almost physical. Gratitude is temporary. Serena was right. She was a nursemaid, a convenience, a debt to be repaid and discharged. She'd been invisible in her old pack. She was invisible here, too. She'd just let herself forget. The room took seconds to pack. She had almost nothing. The dress Serena gave her, a comb from the servants, the dried moonflower she'd kept from that first morning. She left it all on the bed. Took nothing. Just as she'd arrived. The nursery was dim. The baby was awake. He seemed to know. Those golden eyes tracked her as she crossed the room. When she reached for him, his arms shot up, both hands, grasping. She picked him up, held him close, buried her nose in his hair and breathed him in, milk and warmth and that indefinable thing that was just him. For one heartbeat, she considered taking him, just disappearing into the forest. She knew how to survive out there. She'd done it before, and he was hers in every way that mattered. He reached for her. He slept when she sang. He chose her over nursemaids and servants and his own father. She didn't take him. She set him down, kissed his forehead. A tear slipped, landed on his cheek. "You're going to be okay," she whispered. "Your father loves you. He's just terrible at showing it." She stood, walked to the door. Ronan was standing there. Everything about him was wrong, tight, coiled, barely controlled. A current running through him that made the air hum. His eyes moved over her face like he was looking for something and terrified of finding it. "Where are you going?" "I'm leaving." "You have nursemaids. You can't leave. Watch me. The baby is your son, not mine. I'm the Packless Omega, remember?" She tasted iron, old anger and fresh grief melting together. The council's recommendation was noted. She threw his own words back like a blade and watched them hit. His expression broke. Just for a second, one crack in the mask, and through it pain so vivid it was almost unbearable to witness. "I can't," he started. "Can't what? Can't say what you actually feel? Can't stand up for me in a room full of people who want me gone?" Her voice was shaking now, with rage, with grief, with every ounce of worthlessness she'd been swallowing since she was old enough to understand that nobody was coming for her. "I spent my entire life being invisible to people who were supposed to care about me. I will not do it again, not even for you." Her breath hitched. "Especially not for you." She pushed past him. His hand reached out. She felt the air shift, felt the warmth of his palm inches from her shoulder. But it didn't close. He didn't grab her. He let her go. She walked down the corridor. Behind her, the baby started crying. The sound followed her like an accusation. She made it to the palace gate. The guards looked uncertain. She wasn't a prisoner, but the king hadn't authorized. A hand closed around her wrist, not rough, but firm enough that she couldn't pull free. She turned, expecting Ronan, hoping for Ronan. It wasn't Ronan. Serena stood behind her, and she was smiling. "Leaving so soon, dear? But I had such plans for you." "You're upset," Serena said. Her voice was honey and concern. "Come. Don't do something you'll regret. One more night. I'll arrange safe passage in the morning. Somewhere good, a pack that deserves you." Wren's wolf growled. Low. Warning. "Don't," her instincts said, but Wren's flaw was stronger than her instincts. It always had been. Serena was offering warmth and Wren was freezing, and the pull of being wanted, even by a near stranger, was stronger than the pull of an empty road. She let Serena guide her to her private chambers. The room was beautiful. Firelight, silks on every surface, a tea service already prepared, steam curling from the pot, like she'd been expecting company. Serena poured, talked softly, sympathized. The king is impossible. He doesn't know how to love anyone without losing them first. And now he's so terrified of loss that he can't hold on to what's right in front of him. Wren drank the tea. Bitter. A strange aftertaste she chalked up to an unfamiliar blend. "You deserve better," Serena said. "Better than waiting for a man who'll never say what he feels. Better than being the help." Wren's vision blurred, not with tears, something else. A heaviness settling behind her eyes, spreading down through her limbs like warm water turning to lead. "What?" She set the cup down, tried to stand. Her legs buckled. Serena caught her, eased her back into the chair, and the warmth drained from her face like it had never existed. "You were never supposed to survive that ravine," Serena said. Her voice was different now, flat, clinical. Neither was the brat. The words hit Wren through the fog. She tried to speak. Her tongue was thick. Useless. The queen was in the way, too loved, too strong, too permanent, and the baby, a living heir, means the king never needs a new queen, so they both had to go. Serena knelt beside the chair, tilted Wren's chin up with one manicured finger. "The men I hired were supposed to finish the job, kill the child, leave the body where it would never be found, but they got sloppy, and then you came along." She leaned closer. Her breath smelled like the same tea. "A Packless Omega with a hero complex. Do you know how many of my plans you've ruined?" "You—" Wren's tongue fought her. "Killed her. The queen. You—" "I did what was necessary, and you are a loose thread I'm cutting." Wren's consciousness fractured. The room tilted. Serena's face blurred above her, cold, calculating, beautiful. The last thing she felt was the bond, the strange, unnamed pull toward the baby somewhere above her in the nursery. And something else. Something deeper. A thread of warmth leading back through stone corridors to a man who spoke in moonflowers and couldn't say what he felt. I should have listened to my wolf. Darkness took her. Serena stepped over Wren's unconscious body and walked to the door. Paused, smoothed her hair, checked her reflection in the polished brass of a wall sconce. "When they find her gone in the morning, I'll comfort the king personally." She adjusted her sleeve. "He responds well to grief. I've had practice." She closed the door, locked it. The nursery was dark. The baby was crying. Not the hungry cry, not the tired cry. The other one. The sound that meant she wasn't here. The sound Ronan had learned to distinguish over the past week, despite every effort not to. He'd let her go. He'd stood in that doorway with her voice still ringing, especially not for you. And he'd let her walk past him because he didn't have the words. Had never had the words. Words were weapons other people wielded. He had silence and action and a kingdom full of wolves who needed him to be stone, and she'd needed him to be human. And he'd failed. He went to her room. The door was open. Inside, the comb on the dresser. The dress folded on the bed, and the moonflower dried and pressed flat, left on the pillow. She hadn't taken it. She hadn't taken anything because she had nothing. He'd given her a room in the royal wing and food on silver plates, and she still owned nothing because he'd never given her the one thing she actually needed. Words. Just words. His beta appeared in the doorway. "The Omega left through the main gate, my king. Lady Serena was seen—" Ronan went still, every muscle in his body locked. Serena. He'd known Serena for years, tolerated her ambition because it was politically useful, but his instincts, the same instincts he'd been ignoring for weeks because grief had taught him that feeling things led to losing things. The Queen's murder. The investigation that found nothing. Attackers who knew exactly where to strike when the guards rotated which route the Queen took through the East Garden with the baby every evening. Someone with access, someone with knowledge, was someone who stood to inherit everything from a dead queen and a missing heir. His wolf surged. not the controlled power he wielded in councils and battlefields, something primal, ancient, the animal inside him slamming against his ribs with a single deafening imperative. Find her. The night the queen died, his beta said carefully, Lady Serena wasn't in her chambers. I've confirmed it with 3 separate sources. She was, where is Ren? Each word a detonation. The beta flinched. Then he ran. Ren woke to cold. Stone floor, stone walls, a cellar deep beneath the palace where the air was damp and the light came from a single torch guttering on the wall. Iron chains on her wrists, heavy, not silver. Serena wasn't trying to suppress her wolf. She just didn't think Ren's wolf was worth worrying about. Ren's head pounded. The drug still clung to her system, making the room tilt when she moved. Serena sat on a wooden chair across the cellar, legs crossed, composed, like this was a meeting she'd scheduled. You didn't need to get involved, Serena said. Any of this. The baby, the king, the palace, none of it was meant for you. You were supposed to die in the forest. A Packless Omega and a stolen prince, both disposable, both forgotten. And the queen? Ren's voice scraped her throat. Was in my way. No emotion, just fact. Ronan would have chosen me eventually. I have the bloodline, the council's support, the political intelligence to actually run a kingdom, but she was there, loved, perfect, unmovable. A muscle twitched in Serena's jaw. So I moved her. You murdered her. I secured my future. The baby was supposed to disappear. The king would grieve, I would comfort, and within a year I'd be queen. She tilted her head. And it was working. Until you crawled out of a ravine with a baby in your arms and ruined 3 years of planning. Ren pulled against the chains. The iron bit into her wrists. Useless. He'll know, she said. He'll figure it out. He didn't stop you from leaving, Ren. Serena's voice was almost gentle. He let you walk to the gate. He let you go. What does that tell you? It told her exactly what she'd been afraid of, that she was forgettable, that the moonflowers and the midnight kitchen and the distance that kept shrinking meant nothing, that she'd imagined all of it. But something stirred inside her. Small, stubborn. The same thing that made her pick up a dying baby in a ravine when common sense said to walk away. Maybe he didn't fight for me in the council, Ren said slowly. Maybe he let me walk away. She lifted her chin, bruised, chained, drugged, and completely, utterly certain. But I fought for his son when everyone else, including you, would have let him die. And that means more than your politics, more than your scheming, more than anything you could ever offer him. Serena's composure cracked. Just a fraction, a hairline fracture in the mask. How touching, she said. It won't matter when you're... From above, a howl, massive, furious. It shook the walls. Dust fell from the ceiling. The torch flame jumped and died and relit. Serena's face went white. He can't know He knows, Ren said. And for the first time since the cellar, she smiled. He always knows where his son is, and his son always knows where I am. The cellar door exploded inward. Not opened, not broke, exploded. Stone and iron scattered like paper. And in the dust and debris, a figure stood, chest heaving, eyes blazing, hands bloody from tearing through a locked door with his bare hands. Ren had never seen the Alpha King lose control. She was seeing it now. He saw Ren first, chained, bruised, standing, even now. Even in chains, even drugged, even in a cellar beneath his own palace where a woman he'd tolerated had put her. Then he saw Serena. The silence that followed was not calm. It was the silence before something breaks so completely it can never be repaired. Warriors flooded in behind him. Torchlight flared. The cellar filled with bodies and noise and the sharp scent of wolves ready to kill on command. Serena started talking immediately. The mask snapped back into place with practiced speed. My king, this woman attacked me. I was defending myself. She's unstable. The stress of court life, the attachment to the prince. I was trying to help her when she became violent and I had no choice but to... Don't. One word. low, final. It shut her mouth like a physical force. He walked past Serena, past the guards, past every person in the room, to Ren. Every step was deliberate, controlled, like he was holding himself together through sheer will. He stopped in front of her, close enough that she could feel the heat coming off his body, could see the pulse hammering in his throat. "Are you hurt?" "I'll live." He nodded, turned to his beta. When he spoke, his voice was steady, but his hands were shaking. "Take Lady Serena to the cells. Charges: conspiracy to commit murder, murder of the Queen, attempted murder of the Crown Prince, kidnapping." A beat. "Treason." Serena's composure shattered. She screamed, threats, denials, the names of council allies who would hear about this. She promised political consequences that would burn his kingdom to the ground. Ronan didn't look at her. He was already kneeling in front of Ren, his bloodied hands closing around the iron chains. He broke them, one by one, carefully. The metal shrieked and gave way, and each time it broke, something in his face tightened. Like the sight of her in chains was a wound he would carry longer than she would. Her wrists were raw, red and swollen where the iron had pressed. He held them in his palms like they were made of glass. "I should have spoken in the council," he said, low, rough, not a king's voice, a man's. "I should have stood up and told every wolf in that room exactly what you are, what you mean to—" "Yes," she said, "you should have." She didn't soften it, didn't tell him it was okay, because it wasn't. He accepted it, nodded once, didn't argue, didn't make excuses. She pulled her hands from his. Not in anger, in something more complicated, something that said, "Saving me doesn't erase the silence. Not yet." "Your son needs you," she said quietly, and walked past him, up the stairs, into the light. He stayed on his knees for a moment, head bowed, hands open and empty where hers had been. Then he rose and followed. But it wasn't over. Serena, dragged backward by guards, screamed one last thing through the corridor. "I demand a trial by pack law. I am a lady of the realm. You cannot condemn me without a trial." The beta looked at Ronan. Ronan's jaw tightened. Because she was right. Ancient law required it. A lady of recognized standing could not be condemned without formal trial. And in a trial, Serena would have every advantage: name, lineage, political allies, the full weight of the old families behind her. Ren would have nothing. The word of a Packless Omega against a lady of the court. Ren stopped on the stairs. She didn't turn around, but her hands curled into fists. The trial filled the great hall, every noble in the territory, every council member, every warrior of rank. They filled the gallery and lined the walls and whispered behind their hands, while Serena stood at the center of the floor in a white dress, composed and luminous, looking exactly like a queen. Her defense was surgical. 3 words, repeated in different forms for 10 devastating minutes. She has no standing. The Omega's accusations are unsupported by any witness of recognized status. She has no pack, no lineage, no bloodline of record. Under the statutes of testimony, her word carries no legal weight. The eldest council member, a gray-haired wolf who'd served 4 kings, confirmed it with visible discomfort. Pack law requires testimony from a wolf of recognized standing. The Omega has no formal recognition. Her word alone is insufficient. Serena's smile was small, controlled, devastating. Murmurs rippled through the court. Warriors who'd found Ren in the cellar, who'd seen the chains, who knew. They shifted on their feet, jaws tight. But the law was the law. Even truth needed standing to be heard. Ronan sat on the throne. His knuckles were white on the armrests. But this was pack law, the foundation his kingdom was built on. Overriding it would crack everything. Serena knew it. The council knew it. The trap was perfect. Ren stood in the gallery, watching her story repeat. Another room full of powerful wolves deciding her fate. Another moment where no one spoke for her. But this time something was different. This time she didn't wait. She stood, descended the gallery stairs, Every eye in the hall turned, nobles, warriors, servants, the king himself. She walked to the center of the floor, stood 3 feet from Serena, in 2 women who couldn't have looked more different, one in white silk, one in borrowed clothes, one with centuries of lineage behind her, one with nothing. "I don't have a pack," Ren said. Her voice was quiet, not performing, not pleading, just speaking truth. "I don't have a title or a bloodline or the standing this court demands." She looked at the council, at the nobles, at every face that had whispered about her for days. "But I was there, in that ravine, in the cold, in the dark, holding a dying baby that everyone else had given up on." She turned back to the room. Her voice gained strength, not volume, certainty. "I was there when the prince had no one, not a king, not a court, not a lady of the realm." She paused. "Me, a Packless Omega who was too stubborn to let a child die alone." Her voice shook now, not with weakness, with everything she'd been holding back for a lifetime. "You want to talk about standing? I stood, when it cost me everything, when my own pack threw me out for it, when I had nothing, no shelter, no food, no wolf strong enough to protect me. I stood and I held on, and that baby is alive because I refused to set him down." She looked at Serena directly. "So don't tell me about standing. Don't tell me about worth. I've earned more worth in one night in a ravine than this court has earned in a generation of politics and posturing." Silence. Absolute. The kind that has its own sound. Then, from the back of the hall, a cry. Small, familiar, insistent. The nursemaid had brought the baby. He'd woken screaming. That specific cry, the one that meant she's not here. And nothing would calm him. The nursemaid stood in the doorway. Looking mortified and helpless, the prince straining in her arms, reaching for Ren, both arms outstretched, hands grasping at the air, that universal gesture, the oldest language in the world. "You, I want you." Ren crossed the floor, took him. The baby grabbed her hair, made a small sound of contentment and buried his face in her neck. And then it happened. The crescent moon mark behind the baby's ear, the royal birthmark that every wolf in the room knew, began to glow. Soft gold light, pulsing gently. Warm. And on Ren's wrist, something burned. She gasped, looked down. A matching mark appeared on her skin, searing itself into existence like it had always been there, just waiting. A crescent moon. Gold light. Ancient, unmistakable. Wolves who understood the old laws dropped to their knees, one by one, then in waves. Was the royal guardian bond. Blood law, older than pack law, older than councils, older than the politics that filled this room. The prince hadn't just emotionally attached to her. He'd chosen her, magically, permanently, a bond that conferred standing no title could match and no law could override. "That's impossible," Serena whispered. Her face had gone white. "She's no one. She is the guardian of the crown prince." The eldest council member rose slowly. His voice carried the weight of centuries. Recognized by blood law, her word carries the weight of the royal line itself. Ren looked at Serena, not with triumph, not with cruelty, with the quiet certainty of someone who had finally stopped waiting for the world to tell her she mattered and decided it for herself. "I saw you," Ren said, "in the cellar. I heard every word, and my word now stands." Something broke behind Serena's eyes. The last thread of control, the last calculation. All of it fell away, and what remained was raw and desperate and cornered. She lunged, not with words, with violence. Her hand found the blade on the nearest guard's belt, and she ripped it free and launched herself at Ren. At the baby. Ren's wolf. The wolf that went silent when her pack cast her out. The wolf that had been barely a whisper for weeks, barely a flicker, barely alive, erupted. The shift was blinding, not the small, weakened form she expected. A wolf of pure silver light, larger than she'd ever been, powered by the guardian bond and every ounce of stubborn, furious love she'd been carrying since the moment she picked up a dying baby in a ravine and refused to set him down. She didn't attack Serena. She shielded, her body between the blade and the child, a wall of light and teeth and absolute refusal. The force of the shift sent a shockwave through the hall that knocked Serena backward, stumbling, the blade clattering from her hand. Guards seized her. It was over. The court stared at the silver wolf standing over the prince. Protective, magnificent, unbreakable, the Packless Omega, the stray, the nobody. She was never nobody. She just needed a reason to believe it. The court emptied. Serena was taken to the cells, real cells this time with silver-lined walls and no possibility of escape. The council formally recognized Wren's guardian status with documents and seals and ancient words that meant more than modern law. The baby was safe in the nursery, sleeping soundly for the first time since his mother died. The nursemaid reported with visible bewilderment that he'd smiled when they laid him down. Just smiled, like he knew it was over. Wren stood on the balcony outside the royal wing. Night had fallen while the trial consumed the day. The moon was rising, full and silver and impossibly close, the kind of moon that made wolves feel things they couldn't name. She was trembling. The shift, the trial, the weeks of fear and hope and grief, all of it catching up at once. Her hands wouldn't stop shaking. The guardian mark on her wrist pulsed softly, warm against her skin, footsteps behind her. She didn't turn. She knew who it was. She always knew. Ronan stood beside her, not touching, leaving space between them, respecting the distance she'd put there. The silence stretched. A moonlight on stone, wind moving through the garden below. "You shifted," he said. "I did. You were—" He stopped, started again. "I have never seen anything like that, in my life." She almost laughed. Almost. I was terrified. More silence, but the quality had changed. It wasn't the comfortable quiet of midnight kitchens. It was the charged silence before a storm breaks. "I need to say something," he said, "and I need you to hear it. All of it." His voice dropped, roughened. "Because I don't— words aren't how I've never been— "I know," she said softly. "I know that about you. In the council." Each word came out like he was pulling it from somewhere deep and reluctant. "When they talked about sending you away, relocating you." His hands gripped the railing. She could see the tendons strain. "I didn't speak because I was afraid." She turned, looked at him, fully. "Not of the council, not of the politics." His voice cracked. "Of this, of what I feel when you're in the room, when you sing to my son, when you sit across from me at midnight and push your tea toward me like it's the most natural thing in the world." He swallowed hard. "I lost her, Wren, my mate, my son, everything in one night, and then you walked out of the wilderness carrying the only thing I had left, and I—" His jaw worked. She watched him fight the words, fight the instinct to close down, to retreat into silence where it was safe. "If I didn't name it, I couldn't lose it," he said. "If I didn't say it out loud, it couldn't be taken from me. That's what I told myself." He turned to face her. And his eyes, the eyes that had watched her from doorways and across dining halls and through the steam of midnight tea, were raw, open, unguarded in a way she'd never seen from him and might never see again. "But then you were gone, and the baby was crying, and I was standing in your empty room looking at a dried moonflower on a pillow, and I realized—" His voice broke. "I'd already lost you, because I was too afraid to hold on." Wren's vision blurred. Tears, not the held-back kind, the real kind, the kind that fall whether you want them to or not. "You didn't lose me," she said. "I walked away, because I needed to know you'd come after me. I tore a door off its hinges." "I noticed." His mouth twitched. "Almost. I will always come after you," he said. "Always. I should have said it in the council." I should have said it the first night when you put that blanket over me and I pretended to be asleep because I didn't know what to do with someone being kind to me. His hand lifted, hovered, then settled against her cheek, carefully, like she might break. Like he might break. I should have said it every day since. You can say it now, Ren whispered. You are the bravest person I have ever known, he said, and I am done being quiet about what you mean to me. He kissed her. Not desperate, not hard, slow, deliberate. A man who did everything with intention, kissing her like he wanted to memorize the shape of this moment, like he planned to carry it in his chest for the rest of his life. She kissed him back, her hands fisted in his shirt, the mark on her wrist flared warm, his arms closed around her, and she felt it. Not just safety, not just belonging, home. She'd been looking for it her whole life, in packs that didn't want her, in approval she couldn't earn, in the eyes of people who looked through her like glass. It wasn't a place. It was never a place. It was the man who spoke in moonflowers, who sat in chairs at midnight, who tore through locked doors with bare hands because silence was the only language louder than his fear, and she was worth breaking it for. Morning came soft and golden. Ren woke in the royal wing. Not the room next to the nursery, his room. She was in his bed. He'd carried her inside when she fell asleep on the balcony, her head against his chest, his heartbeat the last thing she heard before consciousness let go. He wasn't beside her. She knew where he'd be. The nursery was warm with early light. The baby was awake, propped against pillows, grabbing his own feet with intense concentration. When Ren appeared in the doorway, his whole face changed. Both arms up, grasping. She picked him up. He grabbed her hair, the left side, always the left side, and made a sound of total contentment. The guardian mark on her wrist glowed faintly, answered by the mark behind his ear. She laughed. A real laugh, the first one in longer than she could remember. It surprised her. The sound of it, the ease of it, like something that had been locked was finally, quietly open. Ronan appeared in the doorway. His hair was unkempt, his shirt was wrinkled. He looked like he'd slept, actually slept, deeply, for the first time in weeks, maybe longer. The council wants to discuss your title, he said. A pause. Something shifted in his expression, careful, almost nervous. She'd never seen him nervous before. Formally. I don't need a title. Guardian of the Crown Prince, recognized by blood law, it comes with standing, protection, a permanent place in... That's your son's title for me. She looked at him, held his gaze. What's yours? He crossed the room. 3 steps. That distance he'd been shrinking for weeks, he closed it now, completely. His hands found her face, that gesture that was already becoming theirs, already as familiar as breathing. The baby between them grabbed Ronan's finger with one hand and Ren's hair with the other, linking them, holding on like he'd always known this was where they were supposed to end up and had been waiting, patiently, for the adults to figure it out. Mine, Ronan said. Simply, if you'll have me. She looked at this man, the quiet king who spoke in moonflowers and midnight tea and doors torn off hinges, who couldn't say what he felt until she forced him to, who would probably never be eloquent, never be easy, never be anything other than exactly who he was. I walked into a ravine for a baby I didn't know, she said. I think I can handle a king. He smiled. She'd never seen him smile before. It changed his entire face, made him look younger, lighter, almost soft. The kind of face you'd follow into a forest, the kind of face you'd come home to. The baby made a delighted sound, as if he'd been waiting for exactly this. Outside, the sun broke over the palace walls and spilled across the gardens where moonflowers, the ones Ren had planted 3 days ago, on her knees in the dirt while the court whispered, were blooming. They threw her out for saving a baby, called her worthless, packless, nobody. But the Alpha King knew what they didn't, that the bravest wolves aren't the ones who fight the loudest. They're the ones who hold on when everyone else lets go. Want more werewolf romance where love finds the ones brave enough to fight for it? Subscribe now for new stories every week. Like this video if you believe in second chances and wolves who love fiercely. And tell me in the comments, what should I write next? A rejected mate who comes back stronger? A secret baby that changes everything? Or enemies who can't stop wanting each other?